The Adeyemi family had once been the kind of family everyone admired. Their home in the heart of Lagos was always alive with chatter, the clinking of plates, and the smell of mama's cooking drifting into the street. On Sundays, the whole family would crowd around the big wooden dining table, bowls of steaming rice and chicken stew in front of them, while Papa told funny stories about his office. But everything began to change the year Papa Adeyemi lost his job. It happened quietly, no big announcement, no dramatic scene. One evening, Papa came home without his usual newspaper. He dropped his bag by the door, sighed heavily, and went straight to his room without greeting anyone. Mama noticed but said nothing, choosing instead to stir the pot of soup with a little more force than usual. At first, there was just a heavy silence in the house. Papa stopped making jokes, Mama stopped humming while she cooked, and the children, Ayo, Kemi, and Fola, learned to keep their voices low. But the real crack came during dinner one Thursday night. Papa pushed his plate away and said, "We'll have to move from this house. I can't afford the rent anymore." The words dropped into the room like stones into a pond. Kemi froze with a spoon halfway to her mouth. "Move where?" she asked in a small voice. Papa didn't answer. He simply stood, walked to his room, and shut the door. From that day, things were never the same. The weeks after Papa's announcement felt like a slow unraveling. Mama began making phone calls late at night, her voice hushed, as if she didn't want the children to hear her words. Ayo sometimes caught fragments, school fees, job opening, accommodation, before she noticed him listening and sent him away. The rent deadline was approaching, and Papa still had no new work. He spent most days at home, sitting in the living room with the TV on, though he rarely seemed to watch it. Some evenings, Ayo would hear him on the balcony, talking to old colleagues and asking if they'd heard of any vacancies. The conversations usually ended with, "All right, thank you. I'll keep looking." Then one Saturday morning, Mama called the children together. "I found a teaching job," she said, trying to smile. "It's in Abeokuta. I'll be leaving next week, and I'll take Kemi with me so she can continue her schooling there." Ayo blinked. "You're leaving? Just like that?" "It's for the best," Mama replied gently. "We can't all stay here without enough money. At least this way, I can send something home every month." Kemi didn't look excited. She sat quietly, clutching her doll. Later that night, she told Ayo, "I don't want to go. I'll miss you." "I'll miss you too," Ayo whispered, though he tried to sound strong. The following week was filled with hurried packing. Mama folded clothes into a small suitcase, tucked Kemi's school uniform neatly on top, and wrapped food items to take along. On the morning of departure, Papa carried their bags to the bus station without saying much. As the bus engine roared to life, Ayo stood by the roadside, watching his mother and sister disappear into the crowd. He didn't know it yet, but that goodbye was the first of many. 2 months after Mama and Kemi left, the house felt emptier than ever. Ayo tried to fill the silence with radio music, but it wasn't the same. Papa was gone most days, chasing job interviews that never worked out. Sometimes he returned late, smelling faintly of beer, his face drawn tight with frustration. One evening, while they were eating yam and palm oil, Papa cleared his throat. "Fola, your Aunt Reese in Ibadan says she can take you in. She has a shop, you can help her there, and maybe she can get you into a polytechnic when the time comes." Fola frowned. "So I should just go and start helping in someone's shop? What about my friends here?" Papa's voice hardened. "Friends won't pay your school fees. You'll go next week." That was the end of the discussion. When the day came, Ayo followed Fola to the motor park. They joked a little to hide the sadness, but when the bus started to move, Fola leaned out of the window and called, "Take care of Papa, and tell Mama I'm fine when you talk to her." Ayo waved until the bus was just a dot on the road. Now it was just him and Papa. The once lively home became a shell. No laughter, no footsteps rushing to the door, no quarrels between siblings. Just 2 plates at the dining table and a TV that stayed on mostly for background noise. Ayo started taking long walks in the evenings to avoid the heavy silence. Sometimes he would stand at the old compound gate and remember how Mama used to call them in for dinner. He missed the smell of her cooking, the warmth in her voice. Papa spoke less and less. He often stared at nothing, lost in thought. Some nights, Ayo heard him praying quietly, asking God for help. Other nights, he heard him crying. At first, Mama called every week from Abeokuta. Her voice was cheerful, but Ao could hear the tiredness behind it. "How's school? Are you reading your books?" she would ask. But as time passed, the calls became shorter and less frequent. Kemi's voice had changed too. She sounded busier, sometimes distracted. "We had sports day today," she told Ao once, "and I came third in the race." But when he asked if she missed Lagos, she just said, and changed the subject. Fola called from Ibadan too, but his voice was often filled with complaints. "Aunt Reese makes me wake up at 5 a.m. to open the shop. I'm tired, Ao. I just want to come back." One Friday evening, Ao noticed Papa sitting outside with two men from the neighborhood. They laughed loudly and passed around bottles of beer. Soon, it became a routine. Papa would go out after dinner and return late, sometimes smelling of alcohol. "Ao," he said one night, "you're a big boy now. I can't be watching you all the time. Just make sure you lock the door before you sleep." It wasn't like Papa to be so detached. Ao felt like they were becoming strangers, even though they lived under the same roof. One morning, a postman came to the gate with an envelope addressed to Ao. Inside was a short letter from Mama. She wrote about her new school, the student she taught, and how Kemi was doing well. But the last line caught his heart. "Things are not easy here, my son. But I know one day we'll all be together again." Ao read it 3 times, holding on to those words like a promise. Christmas that year didn't feel like Christmas. No big cooking, no music, no visitors. Mama and Kemi stayed in Abeokuta, saying transport was too expensive. Fola sent a short voice note. "Merry Christmas, everyone. I miss you." Papa and Ao ate white rice with stew, no chicken. After dinner, Papa went out, leaving Ao alone with the blinking Christmas lights in the sitting room. In March, a phone call came that changed everything. Mama had fallen ill in Abeokuta and was in the hospital. Ao wanted to visit, but Papa said they couldn't afford the trip. "She's being taken care of. Let's just pray," Papa said. Ao felt helpless. That night, he called Fola and told him. Fola's voice was sharp. "So we'll just sit in different cities and hope she gets better? This family is falling apart, Ao." 2 weeks later, Mama's health worsened. The doctor said she needed surgery. The news spread through the family like wildfire. Aunt Reese called Papa, urging him to gather everyone. That was how, for the first time in years, plans began to form to bring the Adeyemis together in one place, though the reason was one none of them had wished for. Papa told Ao to pack a small bag. "We're going to Abeokuta tomorrow," he said, his voice firm for the first time in a long while. He also called Aunt Reese to send Fola ahead so they could travel together. When Fola arrived that evening, it felt strange. They were brothers, yet it was like meeting a distant cousin. "You've grown taller," Fola said, trying to smile. "You've grown leaner," Ao replied. They laughed awkwardly, unsure what to say next. The bus to Abeokuta was cramped and hot. Papa sat quietly by the window, his gaze fixed outside. Ao and Fola exchanged glances but didn't speak much. They both knew this trip wasn't a holiday, it was a mission. When they arrived, Mama's neighbor led them to the small 2-room apartment she shared with Kemi. Ao was shocked at how tiny it was compared to their old house in Lagos. Mama lay on a thin hospital bed when they saw her. She looked weaker, but her eyes lit up. "My boys," she whispered, holding out her hands. Fola bent down first, tears in his eyes. "We missed you, Mama." Kemi stood by the door, almost hiding behind the curtain. She had grown taller too, and her voice was sharper. "You finally came," she said, half smiling. That night in the small apartment, the tension was thick. Papa sat on one side of the room, Mama on the other. Neither spoke much. Kemi quietly told Ao, she thinks Papa didn't come sooner because he didn't care. Later, Fola whispered to Ao, Papa thinks Mama abandoned him when she left for Abeokuta. It was clear, they had come together physically, but the emotional walls were still standing. The doctor confirmed that Mama's surgery would be in 2 days. The bill was high. Papa paced the hospital corridor, calculating in his head. "I'll have to borrow," he muttered. Aunt Reese sent some money, and a church member in Abeokuta contributed a small amount. It wasn't enough, but it gave them hope. The family sat together for the first time in years. Kemi leaned against Mama's arm, Ao and Fola sat opposite, and Papa was near the door. The only light came from a small kerosene lamp. Mama broke the silence. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you all to remember, you're my children, and I love you. That's all that matters. Nobody answered, but Ao noticed everyone's eyes glistened. The surgery took 4 hours. The family waited in the corridor, pacing, praying, and sometimes sitting in complete silence. Papa rubbed his palms together repeatedly. When the doctor finally came out, he smiled. She's stable. The operation was successful. Relief washed over them. Fola hugged Ao, and Kemi clung to Papa's arm for the first time in years. During Mama's recovery, the family had to stay in Abeokuta for a while. At first, the living arrangement felt cramped, too many people in a small space. But slowly, they began talking again. Fola helped Kemi with her homework. Ao cooked simple meals. Papa started running small errands for the neighbor in exchange for money. One evening, Ao made a pot of jollof rice. Everyone sat together to eat. There was laughter, real laughter, for the first time in years. Even Papa told a joke, and Mama chuckled softly from her bed. It felt like a small piece of the old days had returned. One night, while the children were asleep, Mama and Papa finally spoke. You left when I needed you most, Papa said quietly. You pushed me away, Mama replied, her voice trembling. I went where I could earn money for the children. You never called. I thought you didn't care. By the end of the conversation, they were both crying. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was a start. Mama's health improved quickly. She began talking about moving back to Lagos so the family could live together again. Even if it's just one room, at least we'll be together, she said. Papa agreed, though the thought of starting over scared him. Kemi handed Papa a small brown envelope one morning. Inside was 15,000 Nigerian nairas she had saved from selling snacks at school. For our rent when we go back, she said shyly. Papa's eyes softened. Thank you, my daughter. You've grown into a strong young woman. Aunt Reese called to say she could no longer keep Fola at her shop if he planned to leave often. Papa assured her, he's coming back to Lagos with us soon. Fola looked relieved. I'm ready to come home for good. After weeks in Abeokuta, Papa found a small one-room apartment in Lagos through an old friend. It wasn't much, but it was affordable. They agreed to move in together once Mama was strong enough to travel. On a bright Saturday morning, they packed their few belongings into a borrowed car. Mama sat in front, Kemi beside her, while Ao and Fola squeezed into the back with bags. As they left Abeokuta, the family watched the hospital fade from view. Ahead was Lagos, crowded, noisy, and unpredictable. But this time, they were going together. The Lagos air was hot and dusty as they stepped into their new one-room apartment. It was nothing like their old home, just a single space with a tiny kitchen in the corner and a bathroom outside that they shared with other tenants. This is small, Kemi whispered. It's ours, Mama said firmly. And we're together. Living together after years apart wasn't easy. Papa was used to making decisions alone. Mama had her own routines from Abeokuta. Fola and Ao often clashed over space, while Kemi complained about privacy. Still, every evening, they gathered for dinner. It was a new tradition Mama insisted on, no matter how busy or tired anyone was. A friend from Papa's old office offered him a position as a storekeeper. It wasn't his dream job, but it paid steadily. Papa came home the first day with bread and sardines for everyone. This is just the beginning, he said, smiling for the first time in a long while. Mama started selling vegetables at the local market. She woke up before dawn to buy fresh produce, and by evening, she returned with enough money for the next day's needs. Sometimes, Kemi joined her, helping to count change and arrange tomatoes in neat piles. Papa enrolled Kemi back into a nearby school. Ao continued at his old secondary school, walking a long distance every day. Fola postponed his studies to help Papa with bills, taking small carpentry jobs around the neighborhood. Education will come, Fola said to Ao. For now we survive. One rainy night, water leaked through the roof and soaked their bedding. The family scrambled to move their belongings to dry spots. Instead of arguing, they laughed at the chaos. Who needs a swimming pool when you have a Lagos rainy season? Fola joked, making everyone chuckle. One afternoon, an old neighbor from their former compound visited. She brought a pot of jollof rice and roasted chicken. I heard you're back in Lagos, she said warmly. The meal turned into an evening of storytelling, and for a moment, it felt like the old Sunday gatherings again. A carpenter who liked Fola's work offered to take him as an apprentice and pay him a small weekly wage. Fola accepted, grateful for the chance. This is how I'll build my own future, he told Ao. One Sunday evening, Mama and Papa sat together after dinner. We've been through a lot, Mama said quietly. Yes, Papa agreed. But I don't want us to drift apart again. They clasped hands, something the children hadn't seen in years. Months later, when Papa got his first bonus, he surprised the family with a wooden dining table. It was smaller than the old one, but it became their new center. Every Sunday, they sat around it, sharing rice, stew, and laughter. The room was small, the city noisy, but the Adeyemis had learned something. Home wasn't the size of the house. Home was being together.